Madame Jacqueline, please forgive me. I'm well aware this is a very sinful thing to do.
You're the one who's after my money, Jacqueline. You're nothing but a low-life dispatch worker with a low-ass income. Meanwhile, Deirdre here is a young lady with wealthy parents.
Let's back up a bit here. So the gist is that my husband suddenly told me that he'd left his job without consulting me and told me he was going to marry the woman whom he was having an affair with. She broke down in tears in front of me, and he covered for her with cheesy lines, melodramatic tears, and a disgusting amount of hugs and kisses. She was acting as though she was the heroine of the tragedy, and they were making it seem like I was the cold, heartless antagonist in their corny love story. Well, ask and ye shall receive, because I decided to do what they wanted me to do and agree to the divorce. But that was only because then I could confront them both with the cruel truth. This is a story that I hope will teach you that it isn't money or power that determines the value of any one person, but things like kindness, generosity, and loyalty are the crucial factors that separate good people from terrible. My name is Jacqueline Davidson, and I'm a 30-year-old dispatch employee, which means I hop around town making money by working temporary jobs that range from administrative clerk work to physical labor out in the farms in the suburbs. My husband, Jordan, whom I married 3 years ago, is also 30 years old, and he worked for a textile conglomerate. I met Jordan when we were both working for the same company, as he was assigned to be my educator. He had a cheerful and charming personality, but when it was needed, he could also command a nice display of leadership and decisiveness. This balance between the yin and yang is what got me attracted to him. Fortunately, Jordan also took a liking to me, and we started dating and got married after a wonderful 19 months. After our marriage, we both worked and spent our days off together, getting along famously well. We thought we were having a nice life as a working couple, but then one day my husband told me something that surprised me. This one announcement was what caused our lives to change very drastically. His announcement was that he had quit his job. He hadn't told me about it beforehand, nor did I detect any hints that he was considering the possibility of quitting. Needless to say, I was terribly surprised and not at all happy. Is it already set in stone, this quitting thing?
I've already quit, Jacqueline. I'm going to start my own business.
What? So you're going independent? At that time, I was already working elsewhere because my temporary employment at his workplace had ended after 18 months. So I didn't know what Jordan's situation was at the workplace, and I had no idea why he resigned. I didn't know when he ever got the idea in the first place, and I didn't know the events that eventually led up to his resignation. When you were still working for your company, you were in general affairs, honey. What kind of company are you going to build?
That's what I'm going to decide next.
That's quite reckless, isn't it?
I don't have much time to think about the business if I'm working a usual 9 to 5. And that's why I resigned first, so I could have enough free time to 1, think about what kind of business I want to found, and 2, where to get the funding necessary to get it running.
I couldn't hide the unease that welled up inside. I mean, the gist of it was that my husband had taken action with a virtually non-existent amount of planning. I thought to myself, with this kind of personality, he is not suited to be a business president. So I tried to persuade him not to quit his job. Hey, can't you talk to your old workplace and somehow get yourself another job, even if it's in the form of rehiring?
I can't do something so uncool, honey. I'm determined to make this a reality. I can't work for that tiny little company while I pursue it.
How are you going to make a living in the meantime?
As long as we find investors, we'll be fine. You have no say in this, seeing as you're just a dispatch worker.
In the end, Jordan didn't listen to my attempts at persuasion, and after he quit his job, he got quickly busy trying to raise funds. And he stopped going to work, which meant he was often at home. He gradually became a night owl. He would still be sleeping when I went to work, and he would come home long after dark, after I had gone to bed. Our lives began to diverge, and our marriage gradually cooled off into something unpleasantly distant and unfeeling. I spent my days being worried sick about Jordan's business because he never told me how it was going. Hey, how is the entrepreneurship thing going?
It's getting there. More importantly, though, how much money do you have in savings?
Savings? Of course I don't have that much. You don't contribute anything to our living expenses, and my entire salary is spent on that, honey.
You're useless.
Excuse me? What do you mean by that?
You're merely a dispatch worker, and your income is low. So the applications for loans don't work out the way I want them to.
So you're saying it's my fault?
That's because it is. You can't deny it. If you had a full-time job and a good income, I'd have a better chance of getting a loan. Your family are all farmers. Can't make much money in that domain either now, can you?
Wait, hold on a second. Applications for loans? You mean to tell me you're in debt?
If I need it, I'm willing to take the risk. Because, as a mere dispatch worker, you can't afford the funds I require to get it started.
When I heard these words come out of his mouth, I was shocked at his idea of measuring someone's worth by how much money they have. In any case, he was calling me some nasty things about the fact that I was a dispatch worker. But the reason why I was in that line of occupation was per his request of prioritizing the housework and taking care of him. Naturally, my salary was lower than that of a full-time job, but the fact that he was supportive of the idea was the most important thing we had agreed upon when we got married. Jordan resented the fact that my parents and entire family were farmers, but he was forgetting one crucial detail. He also benefited financially from my relatives. You see, the house we were living in belonged to my uncle, and while he was abroad on extended business, he allowed us to stay there without any rent to pay. Moreover, the house was a large mansion that did not match a young couple early in their years of being married. And I spent a lot of time cleaning and maintaining the interior. I never thought that my husband would say such a thing to me now, especially because this situation had been alleviated by the generosity of my relatives. He's changed, and it wasn't good. He was never like this before, but I had no choice but to believe that one day he would wake up and to hope that that day was nigh. One day, we decided to have a get-together for the members who were investing in his business. He decided to have it at our house. He told me that he had asked some of his acquaintances to help me with the preparations. What? You don't have to, honey. I'm going to be fine on my own.
Well, she's a good cook, Jacqueline. She's very eager to help.
But I don't like having strangers in the kitchen. I'm asking you to tell her that her help won't be needed.
Don't say that. Please don't say that. She's the daughter of a wealthy family, you know. Her parents have agreed to give me a very large investment.
I gave in the end, thinking that if it was going to be related to the gain and success of his business, I had no choice. On the day of the party, the woman he mentioned did indeed come to help, but she arrived when most of the food was already prepared by yours truly. The woman, whose name was Deirdre, was a young lass and looked flashy and glamorous in a materialistic sort of way. She donned necklaces and bracelets that were probably worth thousands of dollars individually. She carried a handbag from Louis Vuitton, and all the makeup, manicure, and hairdo were characteristically extravagant.
Hello, I'm Deirdre, and I told Jordan that I would come here to help you out with the preparations.
Ah, yes. Thank you for taking the time to help me.
It's a big house, isn't it? How much did it cost?
I was puzzled by the sudden question. When I couldn't answer, Deirdre seemed to have had an epiphany and said,
Oh, I see. My bad. I suppose you don't know that, do you? Because this is a house built by your husband, isn't it?
I'm sorry. I heard that you're going to help me?
Yes, I am, yes. Tell me what I'm supposed to do.
Well, you could start by making the dressing.
Dressing? For the salad?
Is that actually something you make? What? Well, you can slice up that terrine over there.
Terrine? What the hell is that? Some kind of rodent?
This Deirdre, whom Jordan said was a great cook, turned out to be a woman who couldn't cook at all, even though she herself told him that she wanted to help. For the daughter of a wealthy family, the fact that she didn't even know what some of the hors d'oeuvres were, which are essential for a party like this, let alone make them herself, made me skeptical of her authenticity. Oh, no, that won't do. Oh, I know. You could arrange the flowers for the living room. Would that be all right for you?
Sure thing, Miss Jacqueline.
She came back a few minutes later with the vase in her hands, and I was astonished and downright disgusted to see what she'd arranged. It looked as bad as using an owl as an example of blindness. She had merely shoved them in the vase, with the flowers still wrapped in the plastic. Hey, Deirdre, what are you doing?
What do you mean? I'm decorating the flowers.
Oh, never mind. You can leave them there.
All right.
She walked out of the room in a huff and started to go up the stairs. Hey, wait a minute. Where are you going?
Where does it look like I'm going? I'm giving myself a tour of the house.
Most of the rooms on the second floor are unused. Please refrain from going upstairs.
You even have extra rooms? That's amazing.
I glared up at Deirdre, who stared at the second-floor landing, looking like she wanted to go up and explore. I'm sorry, but you really mustn't.
Oh, all right, I'm coming down.
Actually, the second floor is where my uncle and his wife kept all of their personal belongings. My Uncle Barry is an eccentric hobbyist, and most of the interior decorations and ornaments in his possession are all quite expensive. Some of the rooms even have security systems that set off alarms if anyone other than me enters that particular room. So I strongly warned Deirdre not to go upstairs without my permission, and under the condition that I had to accompany her thusly. Eventually, Jordan returned home with his investor friends, and I pull him aside for a little chat.
Hey, what is the deal with Miss Deirdre? What family is she from exactly?
I have to admit, I've never personally met her parents yet, but she told me stories about how her parents are very wealthy. If I make a good impression on their daughter, news will travel, and the O'Brannons are going to become more enthusiastic to invest in me.
I'll be honest, Miss Deirdre really doesn't seem to be a wealthy lady.
What are you talking about? Everything she wears is expensive brand name stuff.
Well, I mean, if that's what tells you whether someone's wealthy or not, then maybe you're right. And there's something else. She thinks you own the house. You didn't tell her you're renting from my Uncle Barry and Aunt Florence, did you?
That's because, look, we're right in the middle of a fundraiser. I need to give myself some credit. If I lived in a house this big, they would definitely trust me for who I tell them to be.
I was stunned. So you're going around town telling everyone that this house is yours?
Oh, come on, Jacqueline. Don't be a prick. I'll have you know I never actually said those words, you know. I merely talked about the house in such a way that I hinted at the possibility of me being the owner. And all I had to do was give them the final push into making them assume that I am.
Whoever could first of all keep up with that train of thought, and then agree with what the implications were, then I must applaud them. For this was the biggest load of bullshit I'd ever heard. I have so many things to say to him, but his guests were already here and more were coming soon. I didn't have the time to argue with him any longer, so I dropped everything and went to entertain them with a fake smile on my face all the while. After the party started, Deirdre started to act as though she had cooked all the food. I was taken aback by her brazenness, and this was when I genuinely began to think the fact that she claimed herself to be the daughter of wealthy parents was probably a fabrication of her own construction. Call it a woman's intuition, I suppose. Something just wasn't right about Deirdre. I sensed that the atmosphere oozing from her was that of a person trying to put on airs and graces. Since the day of the social gathering, Jordan's behavior had changed yet again. He always came home late at night after meeting people and drinking with them, but now the smell of perfume was mixed in with the putrid odor of alcohol. I began to suspect that Jordan was having an affair, and I wondered how I could confront him about it. But after a few days, to my great surprise, Jordan himself revealed to me that he was having an affair. When I came home that day, I found the house empty, and after having a quick shower, I was having dinner alone in the kitchen. My phone rang, and I found Jordan's number on the screen. He said he had something important to talk to me about, and that he would be home in about 10 minutes. When he came home, he had a certain companion alongside him.
I'm sorry, Jacqueline. I'm so sorry, but I've fallen in love with someone else, and here she is.
He introduced me to the woman he was having an affair with. I can only assume you had a pretty good idea on who this woman could possibly be. It was none other than Deirdre O'Brannon.
I'm sorry, Jacqueline, but she's my destiny. I can feel it in my bones, in my stomach, in my heart, everywhere. I've resigned myself to that fate.
Madam Jacqueline, please forgive me. I'm well aware this is a very sinful thing to do, but I just can't stop loving him.
Deirdre had literally become the heroine protagonist of a corny, tragic romance story. She broke down and got on her knees to beg for my forgiveness.
It's not your fault, my love. It's mine. Please forgive me, Jacqueline.
Hugging his new stupid beloved, Jordan also began to cry and went on to defend her physically and emotionally. Hey now, calm down, both of you. So you mean to tell me, Jordan, that you were having an affair with Deirdre here?
Please don't use that word. This was never an affair. You just met her at the wrong time. If I'd met Deirdre before I met you, none of this would have happened.
So, it's It's my fault? I knew it. All I have to do is step aside now. Jordan, my darling, take good care of your wife for me, okay?
No. No. I will not let you go. I will never let you go. You're the only woman I've ever loved.
Oh, Jordan, my darling, you're the only one I've ever loved too.
Deirdre.
Jordan.
The two of them then hugged each other, kissed each other, and continued with their sobbing. What in the name of Romeo and Juliet horse shit was going on here? I literally felt as though I was the cold, heartless antagonist in their corny love story. I was the villainess. Well, ask and ye shall receive, because I'll play along and say something a villainess would say in a story like that. I know what this woman is up to. She's after my husband's fortune. What a good-for-nothing gold digger you are, Miss Deirdre O'Brien. I said it like a villain would say it, with a wry smirk on my face, staring down at their pathetic faces with a look of contemptuous judgment. Jordan glared at me.
You're the one who's after my money, Jacqueline. You're nothing but a low-life dispatch worker with a low-ass income. Meanwhile, Deirdre here is a young lady with wealthy parents. I'm divorcing you, and I'm going to marry the woman I love.
I said to myself with a loud internal cackle, No, you don't have any fortune, buddy, and you frickin' know you don't. And I knew it was a lie that Deirdre, who had no manners and no education, was the daughter of a wealthy family. I couldn't believe if Deirdre O'Brien was her real name. I began to suspect she'd adopted a fake name to make her authenticity more apparent. She probably had a far less exotic name, something like Jane Doe. By this point, I began to see both of their true intentions in this situation. Jordan was divorcing me, a dispatch worker with an unstable, low income, and was marrying a rich girl. And Deirdre's plan was to pretend to be a rich man's daughter to get close to a wealthy man to marry him and live a life of glamour and riches. I gladly agreed to the divorce. All right then, if you insist that much. Looks like I have no choice. Fine, I'll divorce you, but you'll have to pay me alimony immediately.
That's what I'd expect from a bitch who's after money. Alright, you win. I'll wire the alimony the very minute you demand it. Don't ever get in our way again.
I said that exact same line to Jordan in my mind. I proceeded to demand alimony from the both of them, and they were overjoyed and paid me immediately. I then decided to file for divorce on the same day as I demanded alimony. Now, from this point onward, the star-crossed lovers would find out the truth about each other. I wondered how they would react when that happened, so before I took any action, I decided to wait and see. 2 weeks after Jordan moved out of the house, I received a call from Deirdre.
Madam Jacqueline, how do you do? I must ask you to please move out of that house.
Oh, Madam Deirdre, wife of Jordan, how do you do? I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean.
We are waiting for you to move out as a favor to us, but it seems you're still comfortable, so I believe you've overstayed your welcome. It's high time you left. We want to move in as soon as possible.
Moving here? Is that what Jordan says he wants to do?
No, my darling Jordan is very kind. He feels sorry for you and won't man up to do the right thing and kick you out.
That's very strange. Jordan can't move in here.
Huh? What are you talking about? You're a real pain in the ass, you know that? You must have quite the collection of art in that house, eh? You're not keeping any of that locked up, are you?
You're spot on about the anonymous fact that Uncle Barry does indeed keep pieces of art upstairs.
In case you're wondering, Jordan told me. I'm kind of in a rush. Can you get out of here as soon as possible? You know you shouldn't be in a house that isn't yours.
I finally decided to tell Deirdre the truth, as she was starting to show her true colors. I certainly don't own this house.
So get on with it and move.
But it's not Jordan's either.
Huh?
I went on to tell Deirdre that my Uncle Barry and Aunt Florence had given me control of this house only temporarily. The house was still in their names, and without their permission, they had no authorization of living there. Deirdre was furious when she found out that this mansion was not her darling's.
That son of a bitch! He lied to me! Just look at this mess you've made for us! I'm in debt to pay the alimony, so I'm going to have to demand that back!
Really? Why don't you get your rich parents to pay the alimony for you?
What? That's
You lied about being a daughter to wealthy parents. You can't cook or arrange flowers properly, and your manners are terrible. It's laughable that someone like you could even pull off appearing to be the daughter of wealthy parents. Is your name even Deirdre O'Brien? It sounds way too sophisticated for someone of your status.
You frickin' ugly bitch! How dare you make fun of me? That's it. You pay me back the alimony, or so help me, I'll even give that man back to you.
Sorry, no returns or refunds at this enterprise. Thank you very much. Goodbye. With that, I hung up on Deirdre. Soon after, I got a call from Jordan.
I'm calling off the divorce. Remarry me, I know now. You're all I have.
He told me he was having trouble raising money and was repeatedly getting himself in a large amount of debt. Then Deirdre, the self-proclaimed alleged daughter of a rich family, seduced him and went on to have an affair with him. But she wasn't rich. On the contrary, she was a spendthrift debtor.
I was deceived. She lied to me. My heart's desire is to start over with you. I also want my alimony back.
I can't accept that offer.
Why not? Are you still mad at me? Of course, I made mistakes. That's precisely why I've come to realize that your love is genuine.
My husband's self-deluded confession of love didn't move me one bit. I told him this in response. I realized the truth too.
That's good. I'm so glad you came to your senses.
You know, the truth that I realized is that you are a money-grubbing bastard. I hung up on him without saying another word. I set their numbers to blocked numbers and decided to sever my ties with them both completely. I then decided to move out of the house because it was too difficult for me to live in it alone. When my uncle and aunt found out about my situation, they transferred the management of the house to a local real estate company. After that, Jordan and Deirdre, whose real name turned out to be one Miss Jane Dodley, not too far off from what I predicted, holy crap, went bankrupt because they were so deep in debt. Of course, Jordan's business venture never materialized into anything substantial, and his dream had to remain a dream for another while. How do I know all of this? Because the police who arrested them told me what happened. To my great surprise, they had actually tried to break into the mansion. They thought I was still living there, so they broke in with the intention of threatening and mugging me. But I had long since moved out, and as soon as they entered the property, the security system of the real estate company that managed the property was triggered. The two had masks on, and they were armed with clubs and clutched ropes. And the police are now in hot pursuit for answers. They are going to be living in a building with high, barred walls for the time being. And the only comment I'll give on their situation is good riddance. I was spared from any mishap because I was living in a room in a condo owned by my parents. Truth be told, my parents really are farmers, as that is their main business. But the reason why Uncle Barry and Aunt Florence had a mansion in the first place was because Dad's mother was the daughter of a family of wealthy people who owned quite a few ancestral properties. My parents did not like to show off their wealth because it was an achievement of their ancestors. Nor do I like to boast about my family's notoriety. So I only told my husband that my family were humble farmers. Eventually, I will own and manage the condominium where my parents and I live now. And thanks to my current dispatch job, which was in the domain of real estate management, I've developed a considerable interest in real estate, and perhaps following in my Uncle Barry's footsteps will be in my future. Both Jordan and Jane tried to take advantage of each other's assets by pretending to be wealthy. They thought that paying me alimony for the divorce was simply a pre-investment. They were the worst kind of people, for they transformed the priceless moral values of the tragedy of divorce and the accomplishment of marriage into a finite amount of money. I'm only sorry that I failed to see it in such a man. I'm still aware of my immaturity in how I see individuals, but I'm taking measures to learn as I progress in my real estate studies, so to speak, as I try to live my life with humility. Wish me luck!
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.